Hey there everyone, and welcome back to How To Franchise. This episode, we're digging really deep down in order for this franchise. We're getting to the bottom of the barrel. Yes, those really are all the digging jokes that I've got. My name is Brian, and we are going to be looking at the Tremors franchise. Tremors is one of those franchises you really just can't help but love. It's got this sort of happy-go-lucky attitude within a monster movie, and frankly, I just find that really pleasing to watch. Not only do these movies make you feel that there is a credible threat, but it also just kind of gives you a wink at the sheer idiocracy of the situation going on, and it works. I've loved this series since I was a kid for all the right reasons, so let's worm our way through How To Franchise Tremors. The first film in the franchise has the two main characters, Val and Earl, who are handymen in the fictional Nevada town Perfection. The rest of the townspeople are mostly just there as cannon fodder, so we're not really going to go over them, excluding Burt Gummer, played to perfection by Michael Gross. The only other character of note is Rhonda, who is a graduate student who is there to study seismic activity. Val and Earl decide to leave Perfection after shit literally hits the fan. As they're on the road getting out of Perfection, they find old Edgar, who's hanging out on an electrical tower, but he's not hanging out.
He's dead, Jim.
It's later discovered that he died of dehydration, meaning that he hung out on that electrical tower for at least 2 or 3 days, leading to some suspicion as to how he died, because why the hell would you hang out and die of thirst without getting down from the tower? Val and Earl seem to just keep hitting lightning rods of weird stuff, because whenever they find Old Fred's farm, they find his cattle dead, but they also find Old Fred dead. Old Fred dead, that rhymes. So Val and Earl head back into town, trying to warn everyone along the way that something is happening and that they're going to go to Bixby, not to find new work, but in order to get the authorities. But just as they're about to leave Perfection, something is noticed on their car, a worm-like creature. Due to the monsters earlier in the film destroying the road, Val and Earl are forced to go on horseback in order to get to Bixby. Along the way, they are attacked with what seems like a million of these snake-like monsters, but it turns out to be just one, and that the snake-like creatures that we saw earlier in the film are just its tongues, which is an amazing reveal of the monster, in my opinion. Here we have the Graboids, and I just think that they're a cool monster. They hunt by sound, so every step that these characters take could be their last. The monster, later to be called Graboids, chases Val and Earl through the desert, but kills itself whenever it rams headfirst into a concrete wall, giving us the idea that the Graboids can only pass through soft dirt. After some shenanigans with boulders and pole vaulting, the gang makes it back to town, where they try to warn the other residents of the danger, but they really don't believe in giant worms, until the local shithead Melvin almost gets what's coming to him. After Walter Chang, the owner of the convenience store in Perfection, gets eaten, the rest of the residents make their way up onto their respective roofs. Val tries to contact Burt in order to let him know of the danger, but Burt can't really understand him in his basement, and that leads to the best scene of the movie, where that Graboid just gets the shit shot out of him. Like, my God. God bless America and our uncontrollable proliferation of weapons. Val and Earl come up with a plan in order to use a tractor to escape from town, since it's too heavy for the Graboids to drag down. This plan proves successful, and they pick up Burt and his wife along the way, and they bring along some very nifty pipe bombs. The Graboids, as we have been seeing through the course of the movie, have been getting smarter, and so they dig a trap in order to cause the tractor to crash, and the group has to make a run for it to a group of boulders where the Graboids can't get them. However, this dooms everyone to die of dehydration. They come up with a plan in order to fish the Graboids to death by throwing the pipe bombs and having the graboids being attracted by the sound of the pipe bombs in order to drag them under and blow up. One of the graboids takes the bait and blows up, but the final one, the one that got its tongue ripped off by Val and Earl's truck, is smart. Val is able to trick it though by making it fly straight off of a cliff down to its death, and it's a pretty good death too. And so that was Tremors. While it's certainly no, Citizen Kane, it's a good monster movie. You gotta appreciate the good monster movies whenever you get them, and Tremors is one of the best monster movies out there. It's like a throwback to one of those old 50s monster movies where, like, something would attack a Nevada town, like it's isolated. It just has everything you want from this type of movie. Even the effects for the monsters are still very convincing for a technically low-budget horror movie. Tremors 2 Aftershocks follows Earl from the previous movie down on his luck after he pretty much wasted all of his money that he got from discovering the graboids in the first film. Earl is approached by a Mexican oil company which has been losing workers to recent graboid attacks, so they are tasking Earl with hunting and killing the graboids for a very significant monetary compensation. His partner for this movie is known as Grady Hoover, as well as the geologist Kate Riley, as well as a few other characters, but again, they're dead meat. While Earl and Grady are initially very successful at hunting the graboids, it turns out that the sheer volume of them is too much for the two of them to handle, so they call in their one trusty, redneck, right-wing, Second Amendment loving friend, Bert. God, I love Michael Gross. He's so good as Bert, so good. Bert is very happy to come down as the Mexican government has offered him a gaggle of weapons to play with. The hunting is going good, and by a remarkable discovery, Earl and Grady find a graboid that has come up from the ground and is just laying there. It appears to be sick or something, and so they really have no idea what to do with it, except the Mexican government did offer them an extra monetary compensation in order to catch one alive. So Grady sees this as a perfect opportunity, but Earl is unsure, but he's eventually convinced by money. They call over the mechanic of the oil company in order to fix their car since they wrecked it earlier, but he's missing. Eventually in the distance, they see his truck stop and pull over, but he never comes and picks them up. What's going on? Earl and Grady go check on him in order to see everything's all right, but everything isn't all right. The mechanic, Pedro, has been killed.
Pedro? He's dead, Jim.
Something ate him above the ground. Earl and Grady eventually discover small creatures, which are eventually termed shriekers, and it appears that they ate their way through the graboid's body like a caterpillar coming out of its shell, except the shell cocoon. The cocoon was the graboid. Now the shriekers are interesting because while the graboids hunted by sound, the shriekers hunt by heat signature, kind of like the Predator. Earl and Grady make it back to their base, and Kate has just seen one of the workers die, so they are all freaked out. They're all very, very happy to see Bert come back, but Bert is noticeably shaken too, who was nearly taken out by the shriekers that he encountered a little while ago.
I feel I was denied critical, need to know information.
Bert, fortunately, has been able to capture a live shrieker, and after feeding it some food, they discover that the shriekers reproduce asexually. Unfortunately, shriekers were able to get in the base, and after eating the munitions that Bert brought with them, the shriekers multiply rapidly, quickly overrunning the base. They're able to lock the shriekers into a confined area, but as it turns out, it's also full of food, so the shriekers will be able to multiply even more, only postponing the situation for a far worse one. Earl covers himself in fire extinguisher fluid in order to get inside of that particular building and detonate the explosives that Bert brought with him. Earl is successful, and all the shriekers are blown up in a really, really neat explosion. I'll go ahead and say this movie isn't as good as the first, for just the fact that it does feel a little bit lower budget, but also, as much as I do like the Shriekers, I feel like it kind of defeats the purpose of what made the Graboids so fun in the first place. I mean, it is a fun twist that the next evolution in the life cycle of the Graboids would be these little, you know, pieces of what that don't hear things, instead they see things, which is a fun little, you know, like curveball to throw, but it might be too much of a curveball. Strangely, as much of a curveball as they are, they still work. Tremors 3 Back to Perfection sees Burt return to Perfection, Nevada after some time in Central and South America taking care of Graboids. Burt is joined by Jack Sawyer and Jody Chong, Jody being the niece of the dearly beloved Walter. It's been 11 years since the initial Graboid attack, so the town is pretty relaxed on all the precautions that they had taken. Jack, who is new to this town, runs a phony tour service where people get attacked by Graboids for a quick buck.
Now, as I said, we're in the heart of Graboid country. Right in the heart of it.
However, the Graboids do return. The US government shows up and tells them that they are not allowed to kill Graboids since they're technically on the endangered species list, which doesn't go very well with Burt. Soon enough though, the feds get got, and Burt and his group discovers that Shriekers have arrived, but something else has also come. This is also a good time to mention El Blanco, which is described in the film as being a sort of albino Graboid, which doesn't metamorphosize into Shriekers, and it also responds to a very specific audio frequency, namely the watch Burt owns throughout this movie. The Shriekers have been able to grow and molt into what is known as ass blasters, which are essentially just larger versions of the Shriekers, but this time they have the ability of flight by literally farting out flames. It's weird, it's dumb, and it fits. One of the characters from the original movie, Miguel, bites it, and the group has to make the hasty decision in order to return to Burt's bunker in order to lock down. Since the bunker was only designed to prevent attacks from the ground and below it, the Shriekers and the Graboids, an ass blaster is able to crash through the roof and force Burt to blow up his own bunker. They have no weapons and no hope, but thankfully the universe provides, and they find an old junkyard and they're able to put together random pieces of junk into a weapon, and they use them to kill off the remaining ass blasters, with Burt's watch being used in the final kill where El Blanco eats the final ass blaster. I have to say, for some reason, I prefer this film to the third one for whatever reason. I don't know why. I just find it somewhat more entertaining, if that makes any sense really. I don't know. I just like this one. Tremors 4: The Legend Begins is a prequel to the entire franchise, taking place in 1889 before the entire franchise began, when the town was known as Rejection. Good name. The town of Rejection is seemingly on the edge of destruction after the silver mine, which is where most of the town's money came from, is about to be closed down because several miners have been killed under mysterious circumstances. The owner of the mine, Hiram Gummer, the great-grandfather of Burt Gummer, has come to the town in order to see what the problem is. Hiram and Juan, one of the survivors of the mine attack, figure out that it's Graboids attacking the mine. However, they have no idea how to deal with it, so they hire a gunfighter named Blackhand Kelly. Some shenanigans ensue while they track down the Graboids. Call back to the first movie in 3, 2, 1. Kelly gets eaten, and with that, Hiram decides that it's time to just let things go and let the mine go as well. However, he changes his mind after he hears Rejection has been sending out telegrams begging for help to save their town, and he comes back with a lot of guns. Like, not as many guns as Bert has, but I'm sure for the time this movie's set in, that's a lot of guns. Also, like the big cannon thing. It's awesome. Hiram and the rest of the residents are able to kill all the graboids, and with that, the town is brought back to life. The mine reopens and Hiram decides to stay in Rejection, which has now been renamed to Perfection. Yay. Hiram is gifted a Gatling gun by the residents of the town, and we start to see where that insanity of the Gummer family starts to come in. I have to say I have the least amount of nostalgia for this movie than the other ones, because this one obviously came out later and I was very familiar with the series by the time it came out. But even then, like, it's still really entertaining. It's not a great film. I wouldn't consider it like to this same, you know, stack as the first three, but it's still really, really good. I remember really liking the special features for this film because I enjoy watching shit like that. And this one probably had the most special features of the DVDs that I own, so it's just really nice watching that. Tremors 5 Bloodlines is the most recent entry in the series, and this sees Bert, who is now the star of his own survivalist series a la Bear Grylls, where he meets his new cameraman, Travis Walker. They are brought in by Eric Van Wyck, who works for the South African Wildlife Ministry. An asp blaster has been sighted in South America, which immediately raises Bert's suspicions because there shouldn't be graboids or asp blasters in South Africa, but it quickly turns out that that is indeed true. After some shenanigans with this one guy being kidnapped by an asp blaster and not eaten for some reason, and one of the weirdest bits of dark comedy I think I've ever seen.
He's dead, Jim.
Van Wyck reveals that he is in fact a poacher who is planning to take a graboid egg and put it on the black market for sale. Van Wyck traps Bert in a cage, and in another strange bit of comedy, Bert kind of goes insane while he's trapped inside of this cage, and he gets pissed on by a lion. Why would they do this to Michael Gross? Oh my god. Eventually Travis shows up and helps Bert escape, and they find that Van Wyck has been chased down by the graboids, and also that the tongues can detach now for some reason. They find that he's being chased down because he's holding the graboid egg, which they need because they want to preserve their bloodline, a la the title of the film. I'm gonna go a little bit off track here because there's a scene that takes place right around this time in the wildlife preserve where their sort of base of operations is at, because it is literally just a ripoff of Jurassic Park. Like, it's a Tremors movie. Why do you have to rip off Jurassic Park? Like, oh my goodness gracious. Bert and Travis are able to track the graboid back to its lair where the asp blasters also are, and they find all the graboid eggs. And so they need to come up with a plan in order to do this. So Bert calls in his friend who he met earlier in the film in order to bring his helicopter, and they use the helicopter and a missile attached onto it to blow up the graboid den, which kills all the asp blasters and destroys all the eggs, excluding one, which is in the possession of a young girl named Amala. This is also the time where Travis reveals the terrible truth. He is Bert's illegitimate son from a one-night stand after a gun show in Florida. Which is oddly specific, but you know, whatever. The girl who's holding the graboid egg, Amala, is now the prime target of all the remaining graboids who are hunting her down in order to get that egg back. Bert, Travis, Amala's mother, as well as the people from the village who work at the wildlife preserve, I don't know who they are, dude. I really don't. They are able to produce enough sound to distract the graboids long enough in order for a freak lightning storm to strike the graboid and blow it up, as well as destroy the egg. It's weird, it's dumb, and it's sufficient for a movie like this. In case you haven't noticed, I am not the biggest fan of Tremors 5 Bloodlines. I don't know what it is. I really want to like it. I really do. I love all the other films in the Tremors franchise, but this one just doesn't do it for me. I don't know if it's just the cheap feel of the film, because it does feel very cheap. Whereas the other ones, you know, you could tell that the other sequels were, you know, straight to home video. But this one just feels cheap. And I guess I would say my biggest problem with this film is the graboids, because I'm very nostalgic for the old design. So the redesign of the graboids it's just something that doesn't really grab me immediately, and it really doesn't help that it's just really poorly done CGI. Like, I get it, it's probably cheaper than building the animatronics and they need to keep the budget down. Okay, that's fine, but God, it looks bad. It looks terrible. Anyway, that's pretty much all I have to say about Tremors 5 Bloodlines. It was a disappointment, to be sure, because I was super excited for there to be a new Tremors movie. I was really damn excited, and I'm really excited for the sixth one too. And the trailer, it's got my hopes up, sure, and I'm probably, well, I'm not going to say probably, I want to like it, I really do, but it looks like it's going to be more the same of what the fifth one was, and that doesn't particularly excite me, but I don't know, I might be surprised. I really hope I am. And that's it for this episode of How To Franchise. Please let me know what you thought below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.